Yes, students, hi. So this is CA Pragnesh Kanabar. There is some technical error in the camera, so the video is off as of now. But anyways, what you will need is my voice and my notes over here. The notes are so clearly drafted for this topic, audit committee and corporate governance, that you may not even need my voice. All right, but still, I'll get you through with these notes so that there is no issue later on. So there is this small topic, audit committee and corporate governance, and in which has been amended little bit for May 22 students. And this particular topic, I'm expecting in your exam at least one question. Let me be very clear. I'm expecting one question from here, and that question could be of 5 marks or so. If they want to do a heavy questioning, then this can go to 8 marks, but at least I'm expecting some 5 marks weightage when it comes to the topic of audit committee. All right. Yes, sir. Okay. Now, what can be questioned in the exams? This is the whole table, the whole list of the discussions, and these are my notes. And as you will appreciate that this whole module, which runs into so many pages, around 46, 47 pages, this whole module has been put up in this 1670 pager note, and I can say it with confidence that nothing has been missed from here, all right, from the module. So that is how these notes have been drafted. So students, every single point has been covered in these notes, but obviously students will be of the view that, sir, are we supposed to do everything? How can we approach this particular topic? Then let me tell you, this part 2 audit committee regulations as per SEBI LODR. All right. Then part 2 of my notes. Then part 3 audit committee under section 177. Now this is extremely sensitive. Extremely sensitive. All right. Then one of the most frequently asked question, whether we pick up ICAI MCQ book or their question bank, is with respect to this regulation 17. Is with respect to this regulation 17, verification regarding composition of the board. All right. So this has been very frequently asked. Then you will see various committees. That is part 6 of my notes. All right. Even this is very important. All right. And wherever you see disclosures, some disclosures over here are also important. Correct. So as a student, and the last part that is important is this auditor certificate. What report on corporate governance is supposed to be given, and what is the role of a practicing chartered accountant or the auditor over there. All right. So as a student, I have seen that as a student, I've analyzed. I'm talking as a student, not as a professor. That many students leave this topic in option, and they are not doing it properly. Whereas the only thing that needs to be done in this particular topic is the set of my notes that you have over here. It is very clearly given. All right, but still students needed some video guidance, so I thought that it is better to shoot a video so that I keep you motivated for this particular topic. Correct. Now, as we go ahead with this particular topic, as you can see, the first thing is the legal framework, SEBI LODR. Yes, listing obligations and disclosure requirements. So obviously, it is worried about all such entities. It is worried about all such entities whose securities, not only shares, whose securities are listed on a recognized stock exchange. Correct. So that is LODR. What are their obligations and disclosure requirements? Correct. So I have clearly given some introduction over here. This I have just given it to you so that you can have a broad overview. In this particular video, I will focus on all the areas that are sensitive and important. All right. So the first thing is applicability of LODR. Obviously, LODR shall apply to listed entity who has listed any of the following securities on a recognized stock exchange. Correct. Now, what is a recognized stock exchange? A recognized stock exchange means stock exchange which is recognized by central government under section 4 of Securities Contract Regulation Act 1956. That is recognized stock exchange. Correct. So you see the stock exchanges, that is nothing new for you, and you hear about this in your law subject. So it applies to listed entity who has listed any of the following designated securities on a recognized stock exchange. They are saying any of the following designated securities. Now look at this. Which securities? Specified securities listed on main board or SME exchange or institutional trading platform. Then non-convertible debt securities. Oh, good. So debt securities also fine. Non-convertible redeemable preference shares, perpetual debt instruments, IDR, Indian depository receipts, securitized debt instruments, security receipts, units issued by mutual fund, and any other security as may be specified by the board. Obviously, in your SFM subject, you would have heard about these securities. Fine. So they are worried about these securities listed on a recognized stock exchange. Let me tell you, there are some regulation numbers from the SEBI LODR which are applicable only to some entities, only to some specific entities. Like, for example, some regulations are applicable only to top 500 listed entities, or top 1000 listed entities, or top 2000 listed entities. So that is determined based upon their market capitalization of the immediately preceding financial year, whereas some regulations are applicable only for such entities which have listed their debt securities, and that also high value debt entity, they call it as. So debt securities which have value of around rupees 500 crores or more, that we will, when we get into the regulations, you will understand more. So there are some regulations which are based upon some numerical thresholds. For such regulations, the threshold has to be taken from the immediately preceding financial year, and it is based upon either their market capitalization or outstanding value of debt securities. That will be given in the regulation itself. वो regulation के अंदर ही बोला रहेगा. But what I want to say is that there are some regulations which are specifically applicable only to some specific entities. Correct. Now the point is that when the regulation is applicable, they say top 1000, top 500 and stuff as per immediately preceding financial year. Now the situation can change. So whether, if those regulations are applicable when they're applicable to specific entities, and if those entities they fall below the numerical threshold limit, क्या वो regulation फिर भी applicable रहेगा? Will that regulation still be applicable? The answer is yes. It shall continue to apply to such entities even if they fall below threshold limit. All right. So that is what is given over here. Okay. Otherwise, they have just given the name of what is SME exchange, all right, trading platform for small medium enterprises. Then that SME exchange functions within recognized stock exchange of BSE and NSE. Then they have given the meaning of specified securities, equity shares or convertible securities as defined under SEBI ICDR. So that they are specified securities, but you should not be worried about it. Even if there are, debt securities which are listed, then also SEBI LODR becomes applicable. All right. So this applicability of LODR, you should be very clear. This LODR and stuff, it is done in your law paper also. So if you just download your law modules, and law professors also would have discussed this, but still I'm going through this very quickly so that at least since it is there in the audit paper, nothing should be left out. That is why I'm going through this very quickly. Otherwise, if you are comfortable with your law professor and the law notes, you should continue with that. Just that you should see my notes for the additional things which are not covered in law subject. All right. Okay. Next, why this LODR came up? What are the issues addressed in the LODR regulations? Now, this is a theoretical thing that is given over here. So as you can see, bad RES compliance, bad res compliance. All right. So look at this. Board audit committee disclosures. Disclosures. See, let me tell you very clearly. SEBI LODR came to tell the listed entities what should be their board of directors, what should be their functions, then how their audit committee should function. Then it came for disclosures. Correct. So disclosures on important issues which can bring transparency, disclosures on related party, disclosures on management, business, disclosures to the shareholders. So remember three things: board composition, audit committee composition, and disclosures. In fact, this BAD itself, board, audit committee, and disclosure, this itself is an important part when it comes to audit committee topic. Correct. Then they are talking about risk management. Yes. So this SEBI LODR also tells the listed entities how their risk management should function, what should be their ethics, like code of conduct and vigil mechanism, means mechanism to keep a surveillance on the members, on the employees. Then they are also worried about the material subsidiary of listed companies. In the regulations they have defined also. Then some compliance certificates are to be given by the CEO, CFO, and compliance certificates are also to be given by the auditor or practicing company secretary. So this is broadly what is covered in LODR. All right, this is the whole LODR in front of you. Now, as I told you, this bad and some other basic other committees. That is basically the important discussion from SEBI LODR. All right. Okay. I hope you are still looking at this particular video and you have not shut it, because if you have done that, maybe you are playing with your career. Students who are, who are struggling with standards and auditing, for them, such kind of topics are a blessing. All right. If you're good with numbers and stuff. So without wasting time, I'll go ahead. So the first thing is about qualified and independent audit committee. All right. So audit committee as per SEBI LODR. We have audit committee as per section 177 also. What I have done is I have organized all the discussions in the form of their importance. So what you see in my first few pages, it is very important discussion. Correct. So I've talked about audit committee, then I've talked about board of directors, then I've taken various disclosures point. That is how I've drafted my notes. All right. Okay. So qualified and independent audit committee as per SEBI LODR. As you can see, set refer chart 1 from annexure 1. So basically I've given an annexure for this at the end of the PDF after main notes are over. So you can see over here, audit committee basic composition. This is audit committee as per SEBI LODR. If it is a listed entity which does not have outstanding superior rights equity shares, superior rights equity shares are rights with preferential voting, correct? So listed entity not having outstanding superior rights equity shares, for them minimum 3 directors, 2/3 of the members of the audit committee shall be independent directors. Minimum 3 directors, 2/3 should be independent directors, correct? Listed entity having outstanding superior rights equity share, for them minimum 3 directors, all independent directors. Now there is one way that you keep on by-hearting things, and there is another way that where the entities are much sensitive, correct? There, and where the entities are huge and the entities are sensitive, there they have put more requirement of independent directors. That is how also you can remember. Otherwise, this is so very much similar to what is there in section 177, which talks about majority of the committee being the independent directors, correct? So listed entity minimum 3, that remains common. Over here, 2/3 of the members independent director, over here all independent directors, correct? Now yes, this is the problem in LODR. Either you look at it as a problem or as a blessing, correct? That if you remember this, you get full marks. So across the whole LODR, they have this thing that they keep on repeatedly asking this about the number of directors and stuff. So what I've done is, wherever there are numerical limits, I have tried my level best to put it in green. All right. So you will see that in my notes and stuff, not more than at least these many people and stuff. Either it is in the form of a chart or it is in that green color, correct? So you have this audit committee chart, which you have to remember. Come on, so tell me, listed entity or listed entity with superior rights equity share, for both of them it is how much? Minimum 3 directors, correct? And at least 2/3 should be independent in case of listed entity, and for listed entity with superior rights equity share, all of them should be independent directors, I mean independent members in audit committee. Be careful. All right, we are moving ahead. All right, next, in audit committee, we understood the basic composition from annexure 1, but still it is not over, correct? Financial literate, all members should be financially literate. At least one member out of financially literate should have accounting expertise. Financial literate means ability to read. One member should have at least accounting, expertise. The chairperson must be independent director when it comes to audit committee, because that is the role of audit committee, to coordinate with the auditors to bring transparency. Attendance of chairperson. Chairperson is always required at the annual general meeting to answer shareholder queries. Secretary of the committee. The company secretary shall act as secretary to the committee. All right. Other persons attending the meeting. Audit committee may invite following persons at the meeting: finance director or the head of the finance function, head of internal audit or the statutory auditor, or any other executive. Correct. Sir, when is the meeting? How many times? Sir, it is coming over here. Relax, man. If you go slowly, you will have no problems. Correct. So first, what you should do, you should pause the video, ensure that you by hearting this, and then you are going ahead, because this is the first and the last time that you're doing this. So it is better that you do it with the video itself. Correct. Okay. Now move ahead. Meeting of audit committee, minimum meeting, it shall meet at least 4 times in a year. I think which is very much similar to your other company law requirements. then not more than, at least that this is basically turning out to be, meeting. Look at this, quarterly meetings over here, at least 4 times. Generally, the frequency is quarterly, but don't write in that manner quarterly. So not more than 120 days gap is allowed between two meetings. Quorum, minimum attendance, either 2 members or 1/3 of the members of the audit committee, whichever is greater. So tell me, if audit committee has 9 members, then what is 1/3? Sir, this much we know are 3. Then we should have 3 members in the minimum attendance, correct? So either 2 or 1/3, whichever is greater, and there has to be a compulsory presence of the independent director. Minimum of 2 independent directors must be present. Minimum of 2 independent directors must be present. So only if 2 are present, then both of them should be independent directors, correct? Yes. Okay. Powers of audit committee. You are already aware about powers of audit committee. We keep on discussing this multiple times in our discussions of standards also, but that's okay. We'll just go through this. It will advise advise informers to investigate outsiders. All right. So if it wants some specific advice from professional advisors, it can take it. It can seek information from any employee. It can investigate any activity within its terms of reference. Then if it wants attendance of some outsiders with relevant expertise, it can take it. All right. Powers are only illustrative and not exhaustive. Correct. So whenever companies are forming audit committee, at least these 4 powers must be given. Anything in addition to that can be given, but at least these 4 powers must be given. All right. Yes, sir. Okay. Then role of audit committee. What is the role of audit committee? I have given that as an annexure 2 at the end of the notes. I request you to go through it. You are already aware about the role, that it should not have a big problem, but please ensure that you're going through that. Fine. Next, audit committee shall mandatorily review the following information. Very, very important for exam, because wherever things are mandatorily supposed to be done, all right, review the following information. And if it is not done, then I'll tell you why you should remember all of these points. Let me just give a perspective to why we are doing these things. At the end, as an auditor, you are supposed to give a certificate. If the company appoints you to give that certificate, you are supposed to give the certificate on corporate governance. Understood? सो आपको सर्टिफिकेट देना है कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस पे. अब इसमें से कोई भी चीज अगर वायलेट हुई है, करेक्ट, देन इन दैट केस ऑब्वियसली you will give a negative remark over there. So वो लोग कनेक्ट करेंगे, they will connect the question, they will put up a case study where they will say that okay, ये mandatorily review करना चाहिए था, ऑडिट कमेटी ने नहीं किया, करेक्ट. And then as an auditor, what is your duty? Then tell them that, boss, I know that as an auditor my duty is to give a negative comment in the compliance report. All right, so that is why you should remember this. Audit committee shall mandatorily review the following information. As you see, code word doctor aim weakness. Yes, so doctor, deviations in using the funds raised. If there is any deviation from the funds raised, then doctor R related party transactions must be reviewed by audit committee in their meetings. Then aim, appointment internal auditors, management discussion analysis, appointment of the chief internal auditor, appointment of, in fact, they also conduct, they are also consulted for appointment of stat auditors. And look at this internal audit report relating to internal control weaknesses, management discussion analysis, and if at all any communication has been given under SA 265 by the statutory auditors, which is nothing but letter of weakness and stuff, then even that needs to be reviewed by the audit committee. As an auditor, I will check the minutes of the meeting. See, what they can do is they can also ask you as an auditor, how will you check? आपको कैसे पता चलेगा whether audit committee has reviewed this or not? So I'll have to go through the minutes of meeting, correct? I'll have to have a word with the internal auditor. I'll have to go through that, these reports, whether they have been reviewed by the audit committee or not, correct? So as an audit procedure, this point, ये point हमेशा रहता है, minutes of meeting, and then आप ये सब documents देखोगे, that's it. So it is important to remember the regulation का requirement. All right. After that, if they ask you that okay, ये regulation में what kind of audit procedures you will perform, तो regulation याद कर करके check whether you can just go ahead. All right. Next. Now we are talking about audit committee under section 177 of Companies Act 2013. As you see, I have said that it is given as an annexure 3 at the end of the notes, and you also go through the laws paper where in law subject where section 177 is discussed. So unnecessarily I don't want to act a hero over here that देखो मेरे को भी आता है ये सब. आप देखो annexure 3 में बहुत clearly वहां पे लिखा हुआ है, there should not be any problem. Functions of the audit committee, जो functions सभी LOTR में दिख रहे हैं, similarly those functions you will see over there, but ये सब important है, बहुत important है, और ये आपके लॉ पेपर में हुआ इसलिए मैं ज्यादा इसको ना खींच नहीं रहा हूँ. understood this? Okay, so you can go through that, and if there is any issue, my doubt solving helpline number and stuff is already there with you. ये वाले चैप्टर में ना आप मेरा वीडियो कितनी भी बार देख लो, no matter how many times you see this video, आपको एक बार बैठ के नोट्स के साथ थोड़ा टाइम स्पेंड करना ही पड़ेगा. Just that if you have the video, आपको एक कंफर्ट रहता है that okay boss, what are the important areas, वो सर ने बता दिए, so that you know we are clear with this. Okay, as an auditor मेरा रोल क्या, what is my role over here, what are my general responsibilities when it comes to this SEBI LODR? Please be careful over here. Auditor's role, how he is supposed to coordinate with audit committee. कभी ऐसा boring theory question पूछ लिया, then you should be ready for that. You should communicate frequently and openly with the audit committee. That we have studied this in standards auditing, that we should do this on key accounting and auditing matters. Then, if you have any questions, concerns voiced by audit committee, if audit committee has any questions, they will also communicate with you. So, ये तो थोड़ा communication का point हो गया. Then I will assist and advise the audit committee on improving their corporate governance, their accounting process, their accounting policy, how can they implement their accounting standards, helping them in strengthening the internal control by giving the recommendations. Officially तो आप ये सब consultancy provide नहीं कर सकते ना, because of restrictions under section 144 of Companies Act, correct? Then you will certify the compliance. हाँ, ये याद रखना. You have to certify the compliance with requirements of corporate governance. Anyways, I have said that this is discussed at the end of the topic, so don't worry about it, correct? Then you should document the matters which are important to support the certificate of factual findings. Consider obtaining management representations. तो वो तो हम लोग लेते ही as per standards. तो इसमें कोई बहुत बड़ी बातें नहीं थी, ये normal audit की responsibilities थी, correct? Now go slow in this particular point. ये वाले point में सभी slow जाएंगे. Verification regarding composition of board, as I have said, very important for exams. IC MCQ में इसमें almost every single line पे question पूछे हुए हैं. So when it comes to composition of the board of directors, किसको कौन सी companies की बात कर रहा हूँ? अरे जिसको LODR applicable है, to all such companies, for all such companies I am talking over here. They are saying that there has to be a proper combination of executive and non-executive director. So executive director, non-executive director का एक optimum combination चाहिए. यानी they basically don't want board of directors का जो board है, we are talking about board of directors and not audit committee. वो तो भाई होगी audit committee, उसको तो मस्त बैठ कर लेना. Board of directors में ज्यादा executive director की तरफ we don't want the board to go. So they want an optimum combination of executive and non-executive director. They want at least one woman director. तो वो तो हो ही गया, correct? नारी शक्ति. Next, not less than 50% of the board of directors comprising non-executive. Okay. So sorry, greater than equal to 50% नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर्स. तो मैं तो बोलता हूँ समझो पूरा बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर अगर नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर का रखना है 98%, 95% चलेगा क्या? हाँ चलेगा ना सर. They are saying that it should not be less than 50% non-executive director. If you want even 75%, 80% non-executive director, it is fine. All right. Okay. अब यहाँ पे ध्यान देना, टॉप 1000 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज. अब मैं बोला टॉप 1000 यानी इमीडिएटली प्रीसीडिंग फाइनेंशियल ईयर के ईयर एंड के मार्केट कैपिटलाइजेशन के बेसिस पे होता है टॉप 1000 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज. फॉर टॉप 1000 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज एक इंडिपेंडेंट वुमन डायरेक्टर चाहिए. एक वुमन डायरेक्टर चाहिए, बट अगर टॉप 1000 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज है तो एक इंडिपेंडेंट वुमन डायरेक्टर चाहिए. सो दैट मीन्स उनका जो एक वुमन डायरेक्टर है दैट कैन बी इंडिपेंडेंट वुमन डायरेक्टर, तो दोनों कंडीशन सेटिस्फाई हो जाएगा, करेक्ट? ओके. देन नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर, जो भी नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर है बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स में, बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स में जो भी नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर है who has attained the age of 75 years cannot be appointed or continued unless a special resolution is passed along with explanatory statement. तो greater than equal to 75 years पे स्पेशल रेजोल्यूशन चाहिए उनको along with explanatory statement. All right. Next, कितना मैक्सिमम नंबर ऑफ डायरेक्टरशिप्स आप होल्ड कर सकते हो? ये किसके लिए चल रहा है सब? टू बी फॉलोड बाय डायरेक्टर्स ऑफ लिस्टेड एंटिटीज, करेक्ट? अरे ये पूरा सेबी एलओडीआर जिसको एप्लीकेबल है उसके लिए चल रहा है ना. सो नंबर ऑफ डायरेक्टरशिप, करेक्ट, किसकी बात कर रही है? ये टू बी फॉलोड बाय डायरेक्टर्स ऑफ लिस्टेड एंटिटीज. वेट, अगर मैंने ऐसा कुछ स्पेसिफिकली लिखा ना टू बी फॉलोड बाय दिस पर्सन, दैट मींस देयर इज सम हिडन एडजस्टमेंट. नाउ हियर लिस्टेड एंटिटीज का मीनिंग इज, मीनिंग ऑफ लिस्टेड एंटिटीज, लुक एट दिस. For this discussion, whose equity shares are listed on a stock exchange. Oh, so we are talking about such entities, correct? General rule shall not be a director in more than 7 listed entities. Okay. अगर independent directorship की बात करो तो shall not serve as an independent director in more than 7 listed entities. All right. So shall not be a director in more than 7 listed entities. and shall not serve as an independent director in more than 7 listed entities. All right. Exception, if any person is serving as MD WTD in any listed entity, allowed to act as independent director in not more than 3 listed entities. Correct. So total directorship 7 के ऊपर नहीं जाना चाहिए. इसमें independent director अगर आपको बनना है तो maximum 7 listed entities में ही हो सकते हो. अगर आप MD WTD हो कोई भी listed entity में तो maximum आप 7 independent directorships hold कर सकते हो. All right. So my question to you is that if CA यार ये CA का एग्जांपल ले लेता हूँ, चलो कोई भी रहने दो. इफ राजू अगर वो एक डायरेक्टर है एक्स लिमिटेड में, करेक्ट, एंड अगर वो लेट अस से इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर है दूसरी 7 कंपनीज में, 7 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज में, तो चलेगा क्या? डायरेक्ट, ही इज अ डायरेक्टर, नॉर्मल, नॉट एन एमडी, नॉर्मल डायरेक्टर. ऑलराइट. एक्स लिमिटेड लिस्टेड एंटिटी में, यहाँ एक्स लिमिटेड में इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर नहीं है, एंड राजू इज अ इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर इन 7 लिस्टेड कंपनीज जहां इक्विटी शेयर्स लिस्टेड है उनकी बात कर रहा हूँ. तो चलेगा क्या 7 इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर और एक लिस्टेड एंटिटी में नॉर्मल डायरेक्टर? माय होल क्वेश्चन इज कि ये 7 के अंदर ये इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स भी आ गए क्या उसके अंदर? करेक्ट. So, this is one thing that you need to let me know in my doubt solving chat box, correct? So that I will understand कि आप यहाँ तक पहुंचो कि नहीं पहुंचो. I am repeating the case again. Raju is a non-executive director in X Limited listed entity, and Raju is an independent director in other 7 listed entities. तो ये चलेगा क्या? टोटल 8 हो गया, तो क्या आप इसको बोलोगे वायलेट कर लिया उसने, जनरल रूल वायलेट कर लिया? टोटल 8 कंपनी में डायरेक्टर हो गया वो, 7 में इंडिपेंडेंट है एंड नॉन एग्जिक, एंड बाकी एक एक्स लिमिटेड में नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर है. सो माय होल पॉइंट इज वेदर द वर्ड डायरेक्टर विल आल्सो इंक्लूड इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर, बिकॉज इफ यू से यस देन तो मैक्सिमम 7 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज के ऊपर डायरेक्टरशिप नहीं हो सकता. करेक्ट. सो लेट मी नो वेदर दिस 8 इज अ वायलेशन, यस और नो सर. फटाफट रिप्लाई कैसे करने का चैट बॉक्स में? डाउट सॉल्विंग तो आप ऐप पे करो, पर उससे अच्छा आपको डाउट सॉल्विंग हेल्पलाइन नंबर दे दिया तो उसमें करो आप. ऑलराइट. तो पॉइंट नंबर एफ के लिए बोलने का सर, पॉइंट नंबर एफ आंसर इज यस वायलेटेड, या आंसर नो वायलेटेड अलोंग विद रीजंस. करेक्ट. तो ये मैंने आपको होमवर्क दे दिया थोड़ा मेरे साथ डिस्कस करने के लिए. ओके. नेक्स्ट, मिनिमम डायरेक्टर्स. बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स ऑफ टॉप 2000 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज में मिनिमम 6 डायरेक्टर्स तो होने चाहिए. टॉप 2000 में मिनिमम 6 डायरेक्टर्स तो होने चाहिए. जब चेयरपर्सन की बात चलती है, टॉप 500 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज का चेयरपर्सन नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर होना चाहिए, एंड he should not be related to the MD or CEO as per the definition of the term relative. तो टॉप 500 का नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर होना चाहिए, एंड he should not be a relative, not a relative of the MD or chief executive officer. So NED and not a relative of MD or CEO for top 500 listed entities we are talking about. All right. Okay. अच्छा, ये जो रेस्ट्रिक्शन है, दिस इज नॉट एप्लीकेबल टू listed entities which do not have any identifiable promoters as per the shareholding pattern with the stock exchange. अगर कोई identifiable promoter ही नहीं है उनके as per the shareholding pattern of the stock exchange, तो फिर उनको ये restriction applicable नहीं है. टॉप 500 का भी रहेगा तो भी. ऑलराइट. ओके. नंबर ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स रिक्वायर्ड इन द बोर्ड, वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट है. कितने इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स रिक्वायर्ड है बोर्ड में? अगर चेयरपर्सन ऑफ द बोर्ड इज अ नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर, जो एनीवेज टॉप 500 लिस्टेड एंटिटी में तो होने वाला है, करेक्ट, देन इन दैट केस एटलीस्ट 1/3 ऑफ द बोर्ड शुड कंप्राइज ऑफ इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर. ये देखो तो, वेयर चेयरपर्सन ऑफ द बोर्ड इज अ नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर. अच्छा, दिस चेयरपर्सन ऑफ द बोर्ड ही शुड नॉट बी अ प्रमोटर हिमसेल्फ और रिलेटेड टू एनी प्रमोटर. ओ, शुड नॉट बी अ प्रमोटर हिमसेल्फ एंड शुड नॉट बी रिलेटेड टू एनी प्रमोटर. तो मैं तो बोलता हूँ बहुत सिंपल हो गया भाई. तो टॉप 500 लिस्टेड एंटिटीज में अब कितनी सारी कंडीशन होगी? एक, चेयरपर्सन नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर होना चाहिए. सेकंड, he should not be related to MD CEO as the relative, correct. थर्ड कंडीशन, He himself should not be a promoter or related to any promoter or person occupying management position at the board level or at one level below the board. एक board level या at one level below the board का भी relative नहीं होना चाहिए. So MD, CEO, management position, बोर्ड का मैनेजमेंट पोजीशन या बोर्ड के नीचे एक लेवल का मैनेजमेंट पोजीशन या प्रमोटर, ये किसी का भी रिलेटिव नहीं होना चाहिए. एंड ही हिमसेल्फ शुड नॉट बी अ प्रमोटर, जो चेयरपर्सन नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर है तो. करेक्ट. ओके. सो इन दैट केस एटलीस्ट 1/3 ऑफ द बोर्ड should comprise of independent directors. Yes sir. All right. If it does not have a regular non-executive chairperson, if it does not have a regular, अगर जो बोर्ड है उसका रेगुलर नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव चेयरपर्सन नहीं है, या जो चेयरपर्सन है वो नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर है लेकिन खुद प्रमोटर है, या तो कोई प्रमोटर बोर्ड या बोर्ड के एक नीचे लेवल, he is either he is related to any of these person, correct, as a relative. That means ये वाला जो bracket है basically not followed. Then in that case half of the board should consist of independent directors. यानी कि what we are trying to understand is that if the chairperson himself is a non-executive director, then in that case the board of director 1/3 independent directors should have at least 1/3 independent directors. लेकिन जहां पे चेयरपर्सन खुद नॉन एग्जीक्यूटिव डायरेक्टर नहीं है या तो है पर डाउटफुल जैसा है, करेक्ट, then in that case half of the board should be independent directors. Listed company having outstanding superior rights equity shares will require more surveillance, and that is half of the board should comprise of independent directors. Are you getting my point? Yes or no sir? Yes sir. ये तो नोट आपको लॉ से पता है, 1/2 और 1/3 should be rounded off to the next integer, next number and not the previous number. Okay. आप एक इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर कब बन सकते हो? माय गॉड, it is so much, it is such a favorite point of theirs. Yeah, but December 21 वगैरह में भी, हाँ, so many attempts they've asked this. Eligibility to become an independent director. An independent non-executive director, apart from receiving remuneration, should not have had, अच्छा, apart from receiving remuneration ले सकता है मतलब, and apart from that should not, अच्छा restriction है, have had any material pecuniary relationship with the listed entity, its holding, subsidiary, associate, or their promoters, directors during the 2 immediately preceding financial years or during the current financial year. What is this material pecuniary relationship? Commercial relationship, correct? Supplier, yeah, trying to be the one handling that particular entity and stuff. Okay. So immediately 2 preceding financial years or during the current financial year, जब वो independent director बन रहा है, should not have any material pecuniary relationship. Should not be a material supplier, service provider or customer, or a lesser lessee of the listed entity. Basically business relationship नहीं चाहिए ना. Should not also be a substantial shareholder. This point is their favorite. What is the meaning of substantial shareholder? Because वो नहीं होना चाहिए substantial shareholder. He together with his relative should not own 2% or more of total voting power. Remember this. Total voting power के जो shares होते हैं, that he should not own 2% or more. Correct, sir? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Then I have said that please read the definition of independent director and composition of board of directors along with all conditions from company law subject also. Correct. मैं audit paper में तो mostly यहाँ से expected है, पर एक थोड़ा law paper का भी reading करके गए हो तो it is better. Correct? Yes. Okay. Next. Be careful ना, ये वाला मैं तो बोल रहा हूँ अभी pause करो, ये सब मस्त एकदम बाय हार्ट करो एंड इसके आगे जाओ. पॉसिबल है यहाँ तक शायद आपका करियर ऑलरेडी सेट हो गया है. If you are done up till here, maybe this is their favorite. Whatever I've discussed up till here is their hot favorite. Correct. अब in very exceptional attempts अगर वो लोग चाहे तो they can ask questions from the balance part. वरना अब तक जो डिस्कस किया वो उनका बहुत बहुत फेवरेट है. Okay. Verification of transfer or transmission or transposition of securities. So transfer, transmission, transposition of securities, ये जो करना होता है in case of a listed entity. The board of directors in case of listed entity transfer of securities के लिए committee, compliance officer, registrar to an issue, किसी ना किसी को ये delegate करना पड़ेगा power. Board of directors need to delegate this power. Board of directors delegated authority shall attend to the formalities pertaining to transfer of securities at least once in a fortnight. Every once in a fortnight transfer of securities सही तरीके से हो रहा है ना, that needs to be checked. Correct. Auditor कैसे check करेगा ये? From the minutes of their board meetings. एंड वो देखेगा कि क्या ट्रांसफर रिक्वेस्ट कोई पेंडिंग है फॉर मोर देन 1 फोर्टनाइट, for which there is no follow up that has been taken. So if you know the regulation, you can anyways write कि auditor को करना क्या है. I don't think that should be a problem for you. Correct. Okay. Then ये point, statutory auditor should conduct limited review of audit of all the entities whose accounts are to be consolidated with the listed entity. Wow. The stat auditor has to perform a review of all such entities whose accounts are to be consolidated with listed entity. All listed entities whose equity shares and convertible securities are listed on a recognized stock exchange. For them, this is applicable. That means इसका equity shares, convertible securities listed रहेगा तो debt securities listed रहेगा तो this point is not applicable. But be careful. This is the duty of the statutory auditor. एक LR करना है, पूरा audit नहीं, एक LR करना है, limited review. Okay. Then part 5. Hey, this is all about disclosures. ये तो पूरा disclosure की बात चल रही है. Disclosures about corporate governance under Schedule 5 of LODR regulations. So एक तो remuneration of directors का disclosure, as you can see, उनकी क्या क्या relationship है, transactions हैं, कैसे payments हो रहे हैं, for all directors, सारे directors के लिए, you know, all elements of remuneration, क्या component है, क्या fix है, क्या performance है, क्या performance linked है, क्या service contract है उनका, उनको stock option deals क्या दिए गए हैं, all right. So all of that. Then please ensure that you are going through this approval of remuneration. I am said you are going through this because ये काफी बार law subject में बहुत detail में discuss होता है, approval of remuneration of the directors. So I unnecessarily don't want to extend the video over here. If there is anything that you are not understanding from this particular paragraph, you can let me know. Correct? किसी का नहीं हुआ है discussion, ऐसा कुछ है जो जिसको कुछ नहीं समझ में आ रहा है, then they can let me know. बाकी मैंने clearly बहुत clearly notes draft करके दिए हुए आपको यहाँ पे. All right. Code of conduct. Board of directors shall lay down a code of conduct for all board members and senior management of the listed entity. All right. जब वो listed entity बोलते हैं मतलब SEBI LODR में जितना आया उतना, जो in some regulations they are very clear कि ये equity shares के लिए, top 500, top 1000 के लिए, वरना जो भी SEBI LODR का applicability पड़ा है वो सब everything gets covered over there. All right. Declaration. All the board members, senior management shall, confirm their compliance with the code on annual basis. The annual report of the company shall contain a declaration. Okay, annual report में ये declaration जाना चाहिए. Website display. देखो काफी बार मेरा ऐसा heading पढ़ लोगे ना तो भी clear हो जाएगा. Code of conduct shall be posted on the website. Independent director's role. The code of conduct shall suitably incorporate कि एक independent director का role क्या रहेगा, and that role is given under Companies Act 2013. Vigil mechanism. Be careful. MTP RTP में देखने मिला, past attempt में भी एक बार देखने मिला. Vigil mechanism. What is vigil mechanism? एम्प्लॉयज को फ्रीडम देना, एक एटमॉस्फेयर ऑफ एक एनवायरनमेंट बनाना विदाउट फियर, सो दैट एम्प्लॉयज कैन रिपोर्ट द फ्रॉड टू द ऑडिट कमिटी, ऑलराइट, टू द सीनियर पर्सन्स. दैट इज विजिल मैकेनिज्म टू एंश्योर अ रिस्क फ्री एनवायरनमेंट, एक कम्युनिकेशन चैनल. लुक एट दिस, सो दैट दे कैन रिपोर्ट देयर जेन्युइन कंसर्न्स. इसको विजिल मैकेनिज्म बोलेंगे या तो विसल ब्लोअर पॉलिसी बोलेंगे फॉर डायरेक्टर्स एंड एम्प्लॉयज. This mechanism should also provide for adequate safeguards against victimization of directors, employees, or another person who avail the mechanism. फिर यार जो इसके अंदर रिपोर्ट करते हैं fraud and stuff, then in that case उनका victimization नहीं होना चाहिए, and it should not happen कि यार उनके against सब लोग काम करने लगे. Correct? So ये सब safeguards भी देने हैं. डायरेक्ट एक्सेस टू द चेयरपर्सन ऑफ द ऑडिट कमिटी इन अप्रोप्रिएट और एक्सेप्शनल केसेस. एक पॉलिसी होनी चाहिए कंपनी के पास वेयर दे कैन से कि अगर ये केसेस है, सो XYZ अगर फ्रॉड कुछ मिलता है या तो दे कैन डिफाइन द फ्रॉड आल्सो, देन आपको मिलेगा डायरेक्ट एक्सेस टू द चेयरपर्सन ऑफ ऑडिट कमिटी. एम्प्लॉयज कैन डायरेक्टली रिपोर्ट टू द चेयरपर्सन ऑफ ऑडिट कमिटी. द डिटेल्स ऑफ एस्टैब्लिशमेंट ऑफ सच मैकेनिज्म शैल बी डिस्क्लोज्ड बाय द कंपनी ऑन इट्स वेबसाइट. वेबसाइट पे डिस्क्लोजर चाहिए एंड इन द बोर्ड्स रिपोर्ट, बिकॉज अगर ये सब फॉलो नहीं करती है कंपनी, देन वी कैन गिव अ नेगेटिव रिमार्क इन अवर कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस रिपोर्ट, जो मेरा लास्ट पॉइंट होगा. करेक्ट. सब्सिडरी ऑफ लिस्टेड एंटिटी, बी केयरफुल, काफी इंपॉर्टेंट डेफिनेशन है सर, लेकिन ये यहाँ पे क्यों दिया है? अरे पूरा सेबी एलओडीआर लिस्टेड एंटिटी के लिए है, पर सब्सिडरी ऑफ लिस्टेड एंटिटी को भी कुछ कुछ पॉइंट्स दे वांट टू मेक एप्लीकेबल, सो दैट इज व्हाई दे हैव गिवन दिस ओवर हियर. ओके. एज पर रेगुलेशन 16C, material subsidiary shall mean a subsidiary whose income or net worth exceeds 10% of the consolidated income or net worth. So exceeds 10%. ये 10% वाला criteria of the consolidated income or net worth respectively of the listed entity and its subsidiaries in the immediately preceding accounting year. Next, regulation 24, sub regulation 1. At least one independent director होना चाहिए. on the board of directors of the listed entity shall be a director on the board of directors of unlisted material subsidiary. अच्छा, मतलब एक independent director who is on that listed entity, he should also be on the board of directors of unlisted material subsidiary, whether incorporated in India or not. Whoa. But for this regulation, because this is a very strict regulation, correct? For this regulation, they are saying that material subsidiary shall mean a subsidiary whose income or net worth exceeds 20% of the consolidated income or net worth. So यहाँ पे 20% वाला criteria लग जाएगा. Alright. So consolidated 20% income or consolidated net worth exceeds 20%, तो उसको material subsidiary मानेंगे. वरना otherwise generally SEBI LODR के लिए this is the material subsidiary definition. However, for this regulation, it will be to exceeding 20%. Correct? Okay. Listed entity to form a policy for determining material subsidiary. The listed entity itself should also form some kind of policy कि भाई material subsidiary किसको माना जाएगा, कंपनी की वेबसाइट पे उसका डिस्क्लोजर देना पड़ेगा. तो करना क्या है बेसिकली, review of investments of unlisted subsidiary. Audit committee of the listed entity shall also review the financial statements, in particular the investments made by the unlisted subsidiary, irrespective of it being a material subsidiary or not. तो वेदर अ मटेरियल और इमटेरियल सब्सिडरी, ऑडिट कमेटी को जो भी वो सब्सिडरी ने इन्वेस्टमेंट्स किए हैं उसका रिव्यू करना पड़ेगा. माय गॉड, धीरे धीरे जाना, दो स्लो स्लो. मैं बोल रहा हूँ ना बेटा, आप कितना भी मेरा वीडियो देख लो, आपको एक बार नोट्स तो खुद से रीड करनी है. मैं तो इनफैक्ट आपको एक ऑप्शन भी देता हूँ कि आपको अगर वीडियो ऑफ करके खुद से नोट्स पढ़ने तो पढ़ लेना. आई डोंट वांट टू एक्ट लाइक अ हीरो ओवर हियर कि मेरा वीडियो देखना ही पड़ेगा. दैट्स नॉट द केस. करेक्ट, मेरा जो भी एफर्ट डालना था मैंने नोट्स में डाल दिया है. बट अगर आप को ऐसा लग रहा है कि चल भाई थोड़ा वीडियो देख लेते हैं एंड देन लेट अस पॉज इट एंड लुक एट द नोट्स, देन दैट इज आल्सो गुड अप्रोच. बट मेरे साथ साथ ही प्रिपरेशन खत्म कर दो, बिकॉज ये आपको पॉज कर करके थोड़ा बाय हार्ट करना पड़ेगा. देन लुक एट दिस, द मिनट्स ऑफ द बोर्ड मीटिंग्स ऑफ द अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी shall be placed at the board meeting of the listed entity along with a statement of all significant transactions and arrangements entered into by unlisted subsidiary. All significant transactions and arrangements entered into by unlisted subsidiary. जहां पे भी significant material word आता है ना, वहां पे एक बार definition देख लेना चाहिए. So ये लोग कह रहे हैं that जो unlisted entity है, unlisted subsidiary है, उसका जो minutes है, it shall be placed at the board meeting of the listed entity, and उसके अंदर एक statement होना चाहिए of all significant transactions and arrangements. Now, what is significant transaction? Any individual transaction or arrangement that exceeds or is likely to exceed, शायद कुछ commitment किया हो जो इसका actual accounting impact ना आया हो, exceeds or is likely to exceed 10% of the total revenue or total expense, total asset, total liability as per immediately preceding financial year. My God, that will be considered as the individual transaction which is significant. Correct? ये सब MCQ. Okay, अब एक ही ऑप्शन है, pause, go through it, read it, absorb it, and then go ahead. And that is why I always ask students to prepare audit committee just 1 month before their attempt or so, because earlier याद रख के मतलब ही नहीं, इसको आपको रिवाइज करते रहना पड़ेगा. Next, divestment. If listed entity intends to seize control of the material subsidiary, if listed entity intends कि भाई मेरे को नहीं चाहिए control, they want to sell the shares of their material subsidiary, then first it will require a special resolution in general meeting. This is for material subsidiary. It will require special resolution in its general meeting. Exception where such divestment is as per the court tribunal deal. अगर वो समझो insolvency plan का divestment है या it is as per the court tribunal approved scheme, then in that case obviously such kind of special resolution is not required. All right. Sale of significant assets of material subsidiary. Selling, disposing and leasing of assets amounting to more than 20% of the total assets. So more than 20% of the total assets of the material subsidiary on an aggregate basis during a financial year. On an aggregate basis during a financial year, यानी कि उनके जो total assets है on any year जब भी वो selling चल रही है, if उसका 20% से ऊपर, more than 20% of that asset अगर ये sell कर रहे हैं, dispose कर रहे हैं, then in that case it will require prior approval of the shareholders by way of special resolution. Exception again where it does such divestment or such selling is a part of the overall insolvency scheme. All right. Where a listed entity has a listed subsidiary. Oh, where a listed entity has a listed subsidiary, which is itself a holding company, the above provision shall apply to the listed subsidiary insofar as its subsidiaries are considered. So X Limited listed entity it is controlling Y Limited, which is a listed entity, and it is controlling Z Limited. All right. तो दे आर सेइंग कि जो जो X Limited को एप्लीकेबल है, अगर Y Limited उनकी मटेरियल सब्सिडरी है, तो वो Y Limited को भी एप्लीकेबल होगा अगर उनकी Z Limited मटेरियल सब्सिडरी। ऑल राइट, सो दैट इज द सेम थिंग। अब बेटा मैं चाहता हूं कि वापस आप एक बार इसको देखो और फटाफट करने के चक्कर में कुछ मिस तो नहीं कर रहे ना, वो देखो। ऑल राइट, they have used multiple words in this particular regulation. One is material subsidiary. A material subsidiary could be either listed or unlisted, correct? सिर्फ मेरे को जो कुछ कुछ बातें क्लैरिफाई करनी है, that I am clarifying over here. But regulation 24 sub regulation 1 is worried only about unlisted material subsidiary. All right, so at least one independent director of the listed entity shall also be on the director of unlisted material subsidiary. Why यहाँ पे unlisted specifically बोला and why not listed? यहाँ पे unlisted specifically क्यों बोला and why not listed? Just a minute. ऐसा क्यों किया? बिकॉज ऑब्वियसली अगर वो एक लिस्टेड एंटिटी होती बेटा, तो एनीवेज उनका इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर्स तो होते ही ना उनके बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर में, बिकॉज वी सॉ दैट देयर इज सम मिनिमम इंडिपेंडेंट डायरेक्टर रिक्वायरमेंट। ऑलराइट, तो दैट इज व्हाई you understood that this has to be for unlisted material subsidiary, this particular regulation. Then अगर आप देखोगे listed entity to form a policy for determining material subsidiary, देन अगर आप देखोगे तो यहाँ पे अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी का ही इन्वेस्टमेंट्स इवैल्यूएट हो रहा था बाय द ऑडिट कमिटी, करेक्ट। फिर आप देखोगे कि अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी के ऑल सिग्निफिकेंट ट्रांजैक्शंस का डिस्कशन हो रहा है एट द बोर्ड मीटिंग ऑफ द लिस्टेड एंटिटी, बिकॉज अगर ये लिस्टेड सब्सिडरी है देन इन दैट केस तो कैन आई से एनीवेज इट विल आल्सो हैव इट्स ओन ऑडिट कमिटी एंड बोर्ड विल डू दिस, ताकि कंट्रोल रहे ऐसी अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी पे, इसलिए सब हो रहा है। ऑलराइट, सो प्लीज गो थ्रू दिस प्रॉपर्ली। कहां पे उन्होंने मटेरियल सब्सिडरी लिखा है, कहां पे अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी लिखा है। अनलिस्टेड सब्सिडरी लिखा तो इट इज वेदर इट इज मटेरियल और इमटेरियल कंसीडर करना है आपको। सो यू हैव टू जस्ट एंश्योर दैट यू आर गोइंग थ्रू दिस, because wherever they have written material subsidiary it could be either listed unlisted, but where they are very clear about that okay unlisted material subsidiary, then it is applicable only for unlisted material subsidiary, और where they are very clear that okay ये unlisted entity के लिए तो फिर वो unlisted subsidiary के लिए ही है। Alright, so please be careful, this whole regulation, ये जितने भी ऐसे रेगुलेशन थे वो सबको कंबाइन करके मैंने एक साथ लिख दिया यहाँ पे। Alright, इस तरीके से मैंने पूरा नोट्स बनाया है, वरना अलग अलग आप इसको पढ़ोगे तो पागल हो जाओगे। So please be careful over here. Alright, okay, that is why I said whatever I wanted to do मैंने नोट्स में कर दिया था, but then students wanted a video, तो मैं बोला ठीक है चलो भी दे देते हैं, ना तो नहीं बोल सकते ना, बच्चे हैं, घर चलता है इनसे। Okay. Disclosures, management discussion and analysis. So management discussion analysis, you have to just read once the disclosures over here. इसका कुछ नहीं हो सकता, इसको देखना ही है। This is basically printed in the annual report, कभी annual report गलती से देख लिया हो तो सर ये disclosures बाय ऐड करना है, no read once material. All right, ऐसे 720 का रेफरेंस क्यों है सर? Because it is we are comparing it with the annual report, that is why. अब यहाँ पे amendment है, please be careful on this particular point. Related party disclosures. All right, so look at this. The listed entity shall submit, very important, related party disclosures. The listed entity shall submit a quarterly compliance report on corporate governance. ये तो anyways जाता ही है, and this quarterly compliance report SEBI के पास जाता है within 21 days from the close of the quarter, वो anyways जाता है, उसके अंदर का पूरा compliance report होता है। अब contents of such report should contain details of all material transactions with related parties, correct? Now कुछ है material transactions का meaning क्या है and stuff. Look at this E point materiality. The listed entity shall disclose the transactions with any person or entity belonging to the promoter group which holds 10% or more shareholding in the listed entity in the format prescribed in the relevant accounting standards. Okay, तो जैसे AS में disclosure होता है उसी तरीके से आप इसको disclosure करोगे, correct, about the transactions with related parties. ये रिपोर्ट जो होता है कंप्लायंस रिपोर्ट साइन कौन करेगा? इट शुड बी साइंड बाय कंप्लायंस ऑफिसर और चीफ एग्जीक्यूटिव ऑफिसर। एनीवेज इट इज ऑडिटेड बाय द स्टैट ऑडिटर और द प्रैक्टिसिंग कंपनी सेक्रेटरी। तो आपको पता चलेगा, अभी आएगा उसके ऊपर भी पॉइंट। Disclosure, the company shall disclose the policy on dealing with related party transactions on its website and a web link thereto shall be provided in the annual report. The listed entity shall submit within 30 days from the date of publication of its standalone and consolidated financial statements. तो जैसे 30 days हो गया publication का of its standalone and consolidated results. Disclosures of related party transactions on consolidated basis to the stock exchange and publish the same on its website. Okay, तो website पे भी दिखने चाहिए अलग से disclosures. Then अगर high value debt listed entity है, high value debt listed entity, तो उनको तो भाई जो उनके हाफ ईयर के, लुक एट दिस, ये आपने देखा था फॉर द हाफ ईयर, तो जब भी वो स्टैंड अलोन या कंसोलिडेटेड रिजल्ट्स हाफ ईयर की पब्लिश करती हैं, तो अलोंग विद दैट दे नीड टू गिव रिलेटेड पार्टी ट्रांजैक्शंस का लिस्ट टू द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज. ओके, आई एम जस्ट गोइंग स्लो बिकॉज आई फेल्ट दैट दिस पॉइंट इज लिटिल क्रिटिकल, सो गोइंग स्लो. अब इन्होंने बोला कि जो हाई वैल्यू डेट लिस्टेड एंटिटी है, दे शैल सबमिट सच डिस्क्लोजर्स अलोंग विद स्टैंड अलोन फाइनेंशियल रिजल्ट्स फॉर द हाफ ईयर. ओ, और उन्होंने डिफाइन भी किया कि हाई वैल्यू डेट लिस्टेड एंटिटीज का मतलब क्या होगा, आर दोस एंटिटीज दैट हैव लिस्टेड नॉन कन्वर्टिबल डेट सिक्योरिटीज एंड एन आउटस्टैंडिंग वैल्यू ऑफ सच सिक्योरिटीज आर 500 crore एंड अबव. दैट इज हाई वैल्यू डेट listed entity. All right, so be careful over here. Okay, are those entities that have listed non-convertible debt securities and an outstanding value of such securities rupees 500 crore and above. All right, next, seventh point, disclosure of accounting treatment. तो जो भी अकाउंटिंग ट्रीटमेंट है, अकाउंटिंग स्टैंडर्ड फॉलो किया है कि नहीं, उसका डिस्क्लोजर्स देना पड़ता है लिस्टेड एंटिटीज को. लुक एट दिस, ये सब अलोंग विद एनुअल रिपोर्ट ही सबमिट हो जाता है in the financial statements and stuff. Then sexual harassment को लेके disclosures. So if there is a sexual harassment of women at workplace, तो उसके disclosures, number of complaints क्या फाइल थी, number of complaints disposed and number of complaints pending, ये सब कुछ mention करना है as on the end of the financial year. तो जितने भी disclosures के पॉइंट थे वो मैंने एक साथ कंबाइन करके यहाँ पे डाल दिए ताकि आपको एक फ्लो मेंटेन रहे. जैसे पहले ऑडिट कमेटी का फ्लो था, फिर बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स का पूरा फ्लो था, फिर डिस्क्लोजर्स का फ्लो था. अभी अपार्ट फ्रॉम दिस और कौन सी कमेटी होती है, एनआरसी, नॉमिनेशन एंड रेम्यूनरेशन कमिटी. तो ये किसको नॉमिनेट करना है इन द बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स एंड किसको प्रमोट करना चाहिए इन द मैनेजमेंट पोजीशन, ये उसका रोल होता है टू फॉर्मुलेट क्राइटेरिया फॉर दैट. देन रेम्यूनरेशन कैसे डिसाइड करना है, व्हाट शुड बी, हाउ दैट रेम्यूनरेशन शुड बी फिक्स्ड एंड स्टफ, ये उनका दूसरा रोल होता है, नॉमिनेशन एंड रेम्यूनरेशन कमिटी. सो एवरी लिस्टेड पब्लिक कंपनी, ऑलराइट, सो सिर्फ उनके लिए है ये, लिस्टेड पब्लिक कंपनी के लिए they should have a nomination and remuneration committee. एक मिनट, बाकी सब तो मैं बताता हूँ. फिर दूसरा कमेटी देखो, स्टेक होल्डर रिलेशनशिप कमेटी. ऑलराइट, तो ये किसको बनानी है भाई, स्टेक होल्डर रिलेशनशिप कमेटी. सो दे शुड हैव, द लिस्टेड एंटिटीज शुड हैव स्टेक होल्डर रिलेशनशिप कमेटी. तो भाई देखना होता है कि स्टेक होल्डर के साथ कुछ कंप्लेन वम्प्लेन है तो दैट नीड्स टू बी डिस्पोज्ड ऑफ बाय द स्टेक होल्डर रिलेशनशिप कमेटी. रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कमेटी applicable to top 1000 listed entities only. All right, and उनको पूरी कंपनी में क्या रिस्क मैनेजमेंट होना चाहिए, रिस्क ऑफ फ्रॉड एंड स्टफ, ये सब चीजें भी. एंड अगर कुछ भी, अगर दे नीड टू गाइड द कंपनी एम्प्लॉयज ऑफिसर्स रिगार्डिंग रिस्क, तो फिर उसका भी डिस्कशन यहाँ पे है, रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कमेटी. सो दैट इज देयर रोल. तो अभी तीन कमिटी है, कमिटी. आई एम स्ट्रेट अवे ट्राइंग टू कम टू द एग्जाम्स एंड दिस इज मोर सो रिकॉर्डेड जस्ट 1.5 month बिफोर द एग्जाम. तो पूरा फोकस ही एग्जाम ओरिएंटेड है, इसलिए आप देखते रहोगे कि मेरा स्पीड भी वैसा है दैट आप फटाफट फोकस करो ऑन द एग्जामिनेशन पॉइंट. नॉमिनेशन एंड रेम्यूनरेशन कमिटी, स्टेक होल्डर रिलेशनशिप कमिटी एंड रिस्क मैनेजमेंट कमिटी, ये सबका आपको कंपेयर क्या करना है, पता है क्या कंपेयर करना है, कंपोजिशन ऑफ द बोर्ड ऑफ, आई मीन कंपोजिशन ऑफ दैट कमिटी, उनका कोरम, मिनिमम मीटिंग कितना होना चाहिए, यही कंपेयर करना है आपको. मिनिमम मीटिंग, कंपोजिशन, कोरम, मिनिमम मीटिंग कितना होना चाहिए. अब मैं चाहे 10 बार चिल्ला चिल्ला के बोलूं, ये आपको एक बार शांति से रीड करना ही पड़ेगा. ऑलराइट, सो इट्स अ वेरी स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड डिस्कशन, प्लीज रीड दिस वेरी केयरफुली. ये एक में अलग है, दूसरे में अलग है, सो यू हैव टू एंश्योर दैट यू आर रीडिंग दिस. चाहिए तो किधर लिख लो आप भी खुद अपने हिसाब से, एंड इफ देयर इज एनी डाउट देन लेट मी नो. बट ये तीनों कमिटी कैन बी आस्क्ड इन एग्जाम. ऑलराइट, वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम द एग्जाम पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू. करेक्ट. मैं वही हीरो नहीं बनना चाहता हूँ ना, आई डोंट वांट टू बी लाइक दिस कि चलो भाई मैंने आपको बता दिया, ये देखो ये ऐसा नोट्स बनाया है, ये किया, अभी उसको रीड करते करते टिक करता रहो, तो मैं थोड़ी यहाँ पे टीचर हूँ। सो आई नीड टू एंश्योर दैट वीडियो का ड्यूरेशन छोटा रहे एंड यू आर गोइंग थ्रू द पॉइंट्स ऑल्सो, करेक्ट। And I have not cut the notes just to make it a short smart video. Everything is there, whatever is there in the module. ये कमिटीज का खत्म हो जाने के बाद देन व्हाट आर द अदर वेरियस डिस्क्लोजर रिक्वायरमेंट्स, और डिस्क्लोजर रिक्वायरमेंट्स के बारे में यहाँ पे दिया हुआ है। सो एक तो स्टेटमेंट ऑफ डेविएशन वेरिएशन की जो भी फंड्स थे वेदर दे वर यूटिलाइज्ड फॉर द स्पेसिफाइड पर्पस और नॉट, तो ये उसका क्वार्टरली बेसिस पे एक स्टेटमेंट देना है। लिस्टेड एंटिटी शैल सबमिट इट टू द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज। ऑलराइट, सबमिशन टू बी डन टिल, कब तक ये भेजते रहना है, जब तक सच टाइम की जो भी इशू प्रोसीड्स है वो फुल्ली यूटिलाइज हो जाए एंड पर्पस फॉर विच दोस प्रोसीड्स वर रेज्ड हैज बीन अचीव्ड। या तो पर्पस अचीव हो गया जिसके लिए पैसे रेज किए थे, या तो पैसे द मनी इज यूटिलाइज्ड कंप्लीटली। ऑलराइट, then annual disclosure of preferential allotment where entity has raised funds through preferential allotment or qualified institutions placement, तो फिर उसका भी every year disclosure देना है about utilization of such funds। if you remember, utilization of funds पे तो auditor को भी verify करना होता है in कारो, correct। ऑडिट कमेटी मैंडेटरीली उनको ये सब रिव्यू करना ही है रिगार्डिंग यूटिलाइजेशन ऑफ फंड्स। वो तो एनीवेज अपने उसमें था ही, फर्स्ट पॉइंट ही था डेविएशंस एंड वेरिएशंस का यूटिलाइजेशन देखना है। Next, information to shareholders. Listed entity shall give annual report and hard copies of salient features of all the documents. अगर annual report जिन्होंने मेल पे रजिस्टर किया है तो ईमेल पे जाएगा, या तो उनको अगर हार्ड कॉपी चाहिए जिनके ईमेल एड्रेस नहीं है, ईमेल एड्रेस रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है, या तो उन्होंने स्पेसिफिकली रिक्वेस्ट किया, तो एक सेलिएंट फीचर्स, इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर्स ऑफ ऑल द डॉक्यूमेंट्स का एक हार्ड कॉपी जाएगा। और किसको किसको जाएगा, एज प्रिस्क्राइब्ड इन सेक्शन 136, नॉट लेस देन 21 days बिफोर द एजीएम। ये तो एनीवेज कंपनीज एक्ट का ही रिक्वायरमेंट है। ऑलराइट, इन केस ऑफ अगर अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ न्यू डायरेक्टर है या रीअपॉइंटमेंट है, तो शेयर होल्डर्स को उनका बेसिक प्रोफाइल भी देना है। Next, disclosure and transparency. What listed entity shall ensure timely and accurate disclosure on all material matters like क्या financial situation है, performance, ownership, governance, ये सब situation पे timely disclosure देना है listed entity को। Alright, manner of providing such disclosure या तो वेबसाइट से दे सकते हैं या तो अलग emails भेज सकते हैं। Alright, then they can put it over there। ये सिर्फ एक बार आप read once कैटेगरी में, ये सब इतना sensitive नहीं है, don't worry। Alright, this all of this is under read once category। Okay। Next, disclosure of events or information. Every listed entity shall make disclosure of any event or information which in the opinion of the board of directors is material. All right, materiality decide कौन करेगा? Board of directors of the listed entity shall authorize one or more KMP for determining materiality। और ये जो contact details of such personal ये stock exchange and listed entity की website पे भी होनी चाहिए। Website display such disclosure shall be hosted on the website of the listed entity for minimum period of 5 years। Okay, be careful over here। जहाँ पे भी कुछ न्यूमेरिकल लिमिट्स दिखती है ना बेटा, सिर्फ वहां पे ही ज्यादा तो क्वेश्चन आता है, बाकी तो और ज्यादा क्वेश्चन आएंगे नहीं, और बाकी जो बोर्ड ऑडिट कमिटी था देयर आई वेंट स्लो, देयर तो यू हैव टू गो डू इट प्रॉपर्ली। हाँ, नाउ बी केयरफुल। वेरियस रिपोर्ट्स एंड कंप्लायंस सर्टिफिकेट ऑन ऑडिट कमिटी एंड कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस। तो पूरा कंप्लायंस सर्टिफिकेट देना है, किसको देना है, सीईओ सीएफओ को। They need to review the financial statements and sign it over there कि it is not materially misstated, कोई irregularity नहीं है, internal control implement किया है। They need to give the disclosure to the auditor and the audit committee। All right, regarding कुछ अगर changes हुए internal control पे तो CEO CFO they need to certify to the board। All right, कि अगर यानी ये सब देना है उनको। Be careful over here। All right, कि क्या क्या certificates है। So be careful please। Yes, yes, okay। Next point, report on corporate governance। The listed entity, ये जो बोर्ड बोर्ड बोलते हैं मतलब तो बोर्ड मींस टू सेबी इनको सर्टिफिकेट्स देने हैं ये सब। ऑलराइट, listed entity report on corporate governance, be careful this particular point very very important। Listed entity shall submit a quarterly compliance report on corporate governance in the format as specified by the board means SEBI to the recognized stock exchange within 21 days from the close of quarter। Within 21 days from the close of quarter। Yes, okay। The report shall be signed either by the compliance officer or CEO of the listed entity। अरे लेकिन इसके ऊपर ऑडिटर का सर्टिफिकेट भी जाना चाहिए ना, दैट इज द पॉइंट दैट वी आर डिस्कसिंग नाउ। ये वही है कंप्लायंस रिपोर्ट एंड स्टफ, राइट। ओके, ये सब इसके अंदर ये सब अटैच ही होता है, ये सब जो आप देख रहे हो। Then auditor certificate, very important, as I told you. Listed entity, अजय days मत भूलना by 21 days from the close of quarter, जो report on corporate governance जाना है वो. Auditor certificate, a listed entity shall obtain a compliance certificate from either the auditors or practicing company secretary. Okay, क्या लेना है compliance certificate में? Regarding that, they have, that listed entity should take a certificate from the auditors or the practicing company secretary that they have complied with corporate governance, and the auditors and the practicing company secretary, they agree with that. अगर इसमें कोई भी adverse या qualified statement है, तो क्लियरली विथ रीजंस, ऑडिटर एंड कंपनी सेक्रेटरी जिसने भी किया रहेगा, प्रैक्टिसिंग कंपनी सेक्रेटरी, ऑडिटर, उनको क्लियरली ये रीजंस के साथ बताना है दैट व्हाट हैज गॉन रॉन्ग. एंड दे कैन आस्क यू एग्जांपल्स कि कब आप एडवर्स या क्वालिफाइड स्टेटमेंट दोगे. नो एग्जांपल्स. अरे तो जितना भी अभी तक डिस्कस किया है ना, सपोज उसमें से कुछ भी फॉलो नहीं किया, then in that case adverse or qualified statement will be given. So if they ask you examples of qualified statements to be given in that auditor certificate, you should be ready with those examples. Correct? Okay. Exclusion, restriction, such verification and certification is neither an audit nor an expression of opinion on the financial statements of the company. करेक्ट. तो ये जो वेरिफिकेशन सर्टिफिकेशन है, ये कोई अलग से फाइनेंशियल स्टेटमेंट्स पे ओपिनियन नहीं है. वी आर जस्ट गिविंग अ सर्टिफिकेट कि भाई हाँ भाई इन्होंने कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस की जो रिक्वायरमेंट है वो यहाँ पे फॉलो की हुई है. It is neither an assurance as to the future viability of the company nor efficiency or effectiveness with which management has conducted affairs. ये कोई अलग से assurance activity नहीं है whereby I am telling you कि कितना efficiently इन्होंने business किया या future में company कितना continue कर पाएगा. तो ये कोई झुंझुन वाला की stock market tip नहीं है. This is just a compliance certificate that I am giving. All right, that is what institute is trying to say over here. All right. Other points covered in this particular topic. Now, these other points you have to ensure that you are just reading it once. This comes in a very least category, but एक बार सिर्फ इसको देखना है. Obligations with respect to employees, including senior management, KMP and directors. तो इनकी क्या मिनिमम मीटिंग रहनी चाहिए. करेक्ट. द बोर्ड, अभी यहाँ पे बोर्ड अभी आप समझ रहे हो ना, बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स की बात चल रही है. Shall meet at least 4 times in a year with maximum gap of 120 days between any 2 meetings. क्या quorum होनी चाहिए बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स का, that is discussed over here, but I am so sure कि आपके लॉ पेपर में बहुत डिटेल में डिस्कस होता है ये सब. करेक्ट. तो आप एक बार देख सकते हो कि इसमें क्या क्या डिस्कशन है. आई रिक्वेस्ट एवरीवन कि आप इसको एक बार रीड करिए. मैंने अब तक आपको पूरा फॉर्मेट तो सेट कर दिया दैट हाउ इट नीड्स टू बी डन. करेक्ट. सो ये आप जितना भी देखोगे सब हाईलाइट करके आपको दिया हुआ है. सो देयर शुड नॉट बी एनी प्रॉब्लम ओवर हियर. करेक्ट. सो प्लीज एंश्योर दैट यू आर गोइंग थ्रू दिस वंस. ये मीटिंग ऑफ बोर्ड ऑफ डायरेक्टर्स एज पर सेक्शन 173 ऑफ कंपनीज एक्ट, ये आपको एक बार रीड करना है. कंपनी लॉ प्रोविजन इन डिटेल, पूरा सेक्शन 173 फिर से प्रिंट किया है ऑडिट की मॉड्यूल में, तो दैट इज वाई ऑडिट का मॉड्यूल थोड़ा बड़ा हो जाता है. करेक्ट. थर्ड पॉइंट, प्लीज बी केयरफुल फॉर एमसीक्यूज. Secretarial audit of listed entity and its material unlisted subsidiaries. Every listed entity and its material unlisted subsidiary incorporated in India shall undertake secretarial audit and shall annex with its annual report a secretarial audit report given by a company secretary in practice. So they are saying that for every listed entity and its material unlisted subsidiaries incorporated in India, listed entity and its material unlisted subsidiaries, वापस बोल रहा हूँ, listed entity, material unlisted subsidiaries इनकॉर्पोरेटेड इंडिया, उनको सेक्रेटरियल ऑडिट करवाना है एंड उनकी एनुअल रिपोर्ट के साथ सेक्रेटरियल ऑडिट रिपोर्ट अनेक्स करके देना है. ऑलराइट. एवरी लिस्टेड एंटिटी शैल सबमिट अ सेक्रेटरियल कंप्लायंस रिपोर्ट टू द स्टॉक एक्सचेंज within 60 days from the end of each financial year. Okay, so that is this discussion. I request you to solve module illustration questions and test your knowledge questions. That's it. And इसमें अलग से सेबी सर्कुलर दिया हुआ है of resignation by the statutory auditor. सेबी सर्कुलर 18 अक्टूबर 2019, पर इसका तो अलग से ऑलरेडी वीडियो लेक्चर दिया हुआ है एंड अलग से नोट्स भी है विच आई हैव प्रिंटेड आफ्टर कंपनी ऑडिट मॉड्यूल. करेक्ट. सो आपने जैसे देखा, जो मैं बोल रहा था कि काफी सारे अमेंडमेंट्स होते हैं एंड दैट इज व्हाई आई ऑलवेज शूट अटेम्प्ट वाइज दिस पर्टिकुलर टॉपिक. स्टिल सम मोर अमेंडमेंट्स आर गोइंग ऑन जो नवंबर 22 ऑनवर्ड्स एप्लीकेबल हो सकते हैं. सो इफ यू आर अ नवंबर 22 स्टूडेंट, ऑलराइट, please check your folder properly. If I've uploaded a separate video for November 22, then please see that particular video. All right. Okay. Thank you so much. All the best. If there is any doubt solving number is there, but I'm still telling you, जब तक आप ये पूरा नोट्स एक बार खुद से नहीं करोगे, ये टॉपिक नहीं होगा. My request is stop the video now and ensure that you are doing the whole notes properly. Correct. And then you will see wonders. कोई प्रॉब्लम होगा ही नहीं. आप ICM मॉड्यूल क्वेश्चंस एंड इलस्ट्रेशन क्वेश्चन देख लो, इजीली सॉल्व हो जाएगा. पर प्लीज एंश्योर कि बिफोर लुकिंग एट ICM मॉड्यूल क्वेश्चंस एंड स्टफ, आपने एक बार सेबी सर्कुलर भी किया हुआ है. ऑलराइट. जो अपना रेजिग्नेशन, स्टैट्यूटरी ऑडिट रेजिग्नेशन वाला सर्कुलर है, दैट वन। थैंक यू सो मच। यस।